Hey, what is going on, class? Welcome to a little TI84 instruction. We haven't done this in a while, but it's because we had to learn how to do this by hand first. That's one of the most important things, is you need to know how to do something before you learn how to do it easy. So this way, with everything in life, if you know how to do it the hard way, you're going to appreciate and actually want to learn how to do it the easy way. I recommend it. Always do stuff the hard way first. That way, when you get that nice power tool, when you get that little trick that lets you do it easier, not only do you appreciate it, but you also understand it. For instance, when we're looking at one of the questions that we had in our warm-up, like looking at the equation 2x squared plus 3x minus 20 equals 0, in order to solve that for x, you don't appreciate how difficult it is unless you graph these by hand and you see like, hey, this is really complicated to graph. Then it becomes a lot easier when you learn the quadratic formula, which we'll see. You should have it in your notes, but hopefully, say it with me. X equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. If you can do that, you're in a good spot. And you should always write stuff out and then do it on the calculator. You can't see what I'm writing right now, but I've written out on my page here the equation that I'm solving. I have the quadratic formula written down on my sheet, and now I'm plugging in the values. So I now have the opposite of positive 3 plus or minus the square root of 3 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 20, all of that divided by 2 times 2. So then, I'm looking at that, okay, now I'm in a place where I want to plug that in. Now, if you have a regular calculator, I'm going to show you how to type this in. If you have a newer calculator that looks more like this, and the way to check is hit the math button, and you'll see that you have math, num, complex, prob, and frac. Frac is for fraction. If you can scroll over and you have this, real quick, this is how you're going to do a problem like this. You're going to hit enter on that, and you're going to type the numerator up here, like so. Do plus second square root 3 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 20. This really tests my mouse agility. Scroll down, and you have 2 times 2, and hit enter. So that's the first way that we can do this, if you have a new enough calculator to do it. Otherwise, what you're going to do is, instead, you're going to use parentheses. We're going to go parentheses, negative 3 plus the square root, so second, and you're coming down here, see the little blue square root sign at the end of my mouse? That's what we're looking for. Hit that square root, and we're basically just going to type in the numerator up here at the top of this fraction. So this is what it would look like on your page. Now we're just typing it in. We have to use parentheses around the entire numerator. You want to be really careful with it. And I'll show you exactly what I mean. But you should also see that we get the exact same answer either way. It doesn't matter the method we choose for typing this in. Scroll out. You'll notice how this thing is no longer over your cursor. That tells you you're no longer typing under the radical. So here's where we're going to hit the second parenthesis. If you have a newer operating system, you'll see that this thing, these end parentheses are bigger, and they are the same height as this radical. So that says that all of this stuff is happening first. And then we hit divided by new set of parentheses, 2 times 2. Close them. These are equivalent, these two ways of typing this. If you have a slightly older operating system, you're going to notice that this thing does like the little beginning of a square root, but then it cuts off and it has a parenthesis right here on its own. If that is the case, you have to close this thing with a parenthesis. So you'll have a little square root sign, parenthesis, all the stuff you type. You're going to have this closing parenthesis to this thing, a second closing parenthesis to close the radical, and then a third to close this. If that sounds like you, if you have something that looks like a little radical with a parenthesis inside of it, just come talk to me. It'll take a minute for us to look at your calculator, show you what to do, and you're going to be like, oh, that's what you meant. That's what we're doing. But then just hit enter, and we get 2.5, which that doesn't look the same as this. And what it is when you type it like this, your calculator automatically goes, hey, they probably want a fraction. Whereas this method, it ends up defaulting to a decimal. So what you can do is, if you were like, I don't want to convert that decimal in my head, if there is a decimal, and let me underscore that, if there is a decimal approximation, if you hit math and hit enter on fraction and hit it enter again, it'll convert it. If you do that and this decimal does not become a fraction, what that means is that you did not get that value from doing something that gave you a fraction. You got that decimal from something that is irrational or cannot be made into a fraction. That just means, hey, your numbers are ugly in that case. Personally, I think that they're way cooler when they're irrational, but then we have to get into what it means to be an irrational number and how awesome they are, because they're so much more complicated than fractions. But it also makes you appreciate fractions more. But then, so you got one root. Now you have to get the second. So what you're going to do is just scroll up until you're highlighting whichever one of these you were using. So if you were on this one, you're going to scroll up till you hit it, hit enter. But I'm going to use this one because I think this is what most people are going to look like on their calculator. So scroll up. So you're highlighting what we typed in, because what we want to do is hit enter, and now it's copied down here. From here, what you want to do is just scroll over until you are highlighting the plus sign, because remember, in the equation, that is a plus or minus. So scroll over till you're highlighting that. When you have a flashing little plus sign here, just hit subtract. And when you have your cursor over something, it'll replace that thing with whatever you have the new type in. And now, just to avoid any errors, just hit enter. So this is telling me that these right here are my two roots. And just by being able to double check this by hand, you could see that. But also, another thing you can do, kind of as a quick little introduction to graphing, if you come up here to y equals and you hit this thing and you go 2x squared plus 3x minus 20, type in the equation here. So this one, we're saying that the roots are -2.5 and -4. So if I come up here and I go zoom 6, this is going to take me to a normal positive 10, negative 10, negative 10 window. So basically just a standard graph. And we can see that, hey, that looks like -4, and that looks like 2.5, which is exactly what we want it to be. So that's something to keep in mind is, hey, you can always grab your calculator to double check your graphing if it's one where you have a calculator free to you. You can also, just as a quick teaser, hit second calc 0. This is a pretty cool one. So you just want to be on your equation. Got to go pretty far to the left. So basically, think of it this way. Turn your head to the right so that you're looking at this thing as being left or right. You want to be to the left of the 0. Click enter. Then they want you to be to the right. And you can see how I've created these two little lines here by hitting enter. I'm telling the calculator, hey, I want you to look about here for this root. Hit enter one more time, and it's going to have you guess. And then boom, 0 at x equals -4, y equals 0. Boom, that's one of your points. Want to do it again? Go second, calc, 2. You got to be to the left of this thing. So I'm going to come over here, hit enter. And really what's cool is you can be really far away. You can make this really obvious. So we see, okay, we got a left bound. I've got a right bound. So now I'm saying I think the root is probably closest to this point here. And you can take a guess. And boom, 0 at 2.5. So that's just another way that you can do this. And it's kind of fun. There are lots of ways that you can use a calculator to solve these. And I highly recommend play around with it. When you're in class and you have time, like mess around with this and see, hey, how does this work? What is it going to do for me? Is there ways that I can use this that maybe Mr. Curry hasn't told us yet? Are there cool things I can do with this? It's always a good thing to do. I hope you're having a great day, and I will talk to you in the next video. If you have questions, please come in and talk to me. I would love to help you with this stuff. Hope you have a great day, and see you later.